Hello, I'm Daniela. If you followed my channel, you know that I love art journaling, and at any one time, I have a few dozen art journals going. I thought I'd show you the start to finish of an art journal, but not in one video. So I'm going to start it in today's video, and I'm going to show you how I prep my journal. Just some things that I do to get it started before I do any layouts or decide on any color scheme or any themes to the journal. This is how I'm going to take a blank journal and just add some elements to take away the intimidation of that blank page. It's also a way that I kind of exercise the book and get it ready, because art journaling can be a very aggressive procedure. There's painting and layers and opening and closing of the books and different textures added to the pages. So these are some little simple techniques that I do. I want to show you the basic tools that I use to get started. You might have some variation of these tools. You might already do these techniques, or you might want to modify them to make them your own. So this is the first in the series for Art Journaling 101. So let's get started. So here's one method for starting an art journal. Now there are no hard and fast rules with any of this. I want to show you my process, and there might be things that inspire you, that you might pick up on, and you might alter to make it your own, and I suggest you do that. No two art journals will look alike, they shouldn't look alike, and you should really use it as a tool for you, for your expression, your creativity, and improving your artwork. So the first thing that I always decide on is what I'm going to use for a journal. There's no single answer. I happen to like these Delusions journals because they open and I can pin them open with my clips here, but the papers are really durable. Now, this doesn't mean you need to get this journal. If you have a lighter weight paper, just understand that you'll have to compensate by either adding additional layers or by gluing pages together. And that's totally doable. That's the whole point of art journaling, is making whatever you have work. This one comes with this little paper wrapper. The journal itself, each page is 5 by 8, and it comes with a pocket in the front, a little hard backing, and so it's always exciting to remove these little paper layers. I don't know, it's like the beginning of the new journal. It has an elastic band to keep it closed. So when I get my journal, the first thing I like to do, just like with a new book, is open it and just really open all the pages. This just exercises them and helps them to lay flat. So I'll take a moment and do this. So now once I do that, my journal is a little bit thicker. And as I add layers and paint to each of the pages, it will just thicken up completely. On some journals, the first page isn't really forgiving. You could try and force it open. I usually just glue it down. So, and I'll do the same thing with the back page. This gives it a little more support. And now I have my pages to work on. To start working on the journal, just to prep it, not even doing the layouts or the pages, there are a couple of tools that I find invaluable. The clips I've already mentioned. I have an embossing tool. It's a heat gun. It's not a hair dryer. It blows very hot air. It's very noisy. The noise is terrible, so I usually mute that, or at least lower it considerably. I'll just give you a quick example of it. But this helps to dry the pages. So if I'm impatient and I can't let it dry, this tool is very handy. Another handy tool to have is wax paper. And even if the pages are dry, or at least somewhat dry, I'll just take a piece of wax paper from the roll. You find this in the kitchen supply section of your grocery store. And I'll just put it in between the pages. It's very inexpensive. So a lot of times in my journal, I'll have a number of these wax paper dividers between my pages. I find that very helpful. So now to get started, there are 3 steps I like to do just to prep my journal. I'll paint with stencils, I'll stamp with rubber stamps, and I'll collage. Now, you can skip any of these steps, you can alter these steps however you like. The first thing I like to do is start with my painting, and that is a very simple process. So I'll take matte craft paint. It comes in all sorts of colors. I chose 3 colors this year that I'm going to really focus on for the journal, but I'm not going to use them exclusively. I'm going to play around with it, and this is for the prep work. So I'll add these to my palette. I also have just some makeup sponges because I'm only going to use a little bit of the paint. You can use a brush if you prefer. Now to prep the pages, I like to use stencils. I'll use some border stencils on some pages. And these are just stencils that are thin, that go the length of the page. If you don't have a large enough one, you can continue to add the stencil as you go, or you can omit it altogether. I like to use some very basic shapes. These are just kind of flattened teardrops. Love that. I always use letters and numbers just randomly. That's just something I enjoy. If there's a particular image you like using, maybe suns or hearts, use that. I'll add these to a few of the pages as well. And then I always like to throw in something a little unexpected. This is a fun little stencil here. Just the areas with the openings will show through, so it adds a little bit of perceived texture, even though it's only paint. So let me show you how I do this. I usually start with my largest stencil, so I'll just roll this one out for now, and I'll start with the shape. So I just start at the beginning of the book, place the stencil down, and I'll choose a color to start with. Eventually I'll go through all the colors. I just take a little bit of that color on my makeup sponge. Don't want a glob of paint, just a controllable amount of paint. And I'll just stamp that image. It'll be haphazard. It's just some of the areas on the page. And when I remove it, I just don't have a blank page anymore. Come over here, do a little bit as well. I can change color if I want, but I'm just trying to set down some of this image, something to distract from the blank page. And so I'll let this dry. Again, this is where this tool comes in handy. There's not a lot of paint here. It won't take very long to dry. And if I wanted to, I could skip this step altogether and just take my wax paper, place it on the page, and move to the next page so I can continue this process. I tend to like to skip a few pages. I'll come here, maybe add this, maybe every 3 or 4 pages. Some pages I'll double up. So I'll do that and start adding the next stencil. So now I've stamped all of those images using acrylic paint on every few pages. And I have my wax paper separating them just until it dries. Some people like to clean their stencils. If I only have a little bit of paint on it, I just let it dry. If you'd like, you can scrub it off with a baby wipe or keep it clean. I don't mind it like this. So now I'm going to go through the rest of the stencils here, the numbers and the letters and the borders, and I'll stamp some more pages using that acrylic ink on different sides of the page, some of the blank pages. Sometimes I might add some paint to the existing pages, and I'll show you how that looks. So now that I've added the acrylic paint to my pages, and I didn't add acrylic paint to every page, and a lot of it is just kind of very haphazard, like this. Some pages have multiple paints, some have just a single paint, and some are left blank. This takes away the blank page, and that allows me to be a little more creative. If this isn't your style, you don't have to do any of this, but this really works for me. So the next element I want to add to these pages is collage. Now, because a lot of these pages will be covered up with my actual art journaling, I'm just trying to add some element of interest, and again, just to a few pages. You can use any type of paper you want to collage with. The thicker the paper, like cardstock or heavyweight paper, the bulkier the book is. That's not a bad thing, but it is something just to keep in mind. Because I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, I'd like to use tissue paper or pattern paper from some old patterns. Even the instructional paper is very thin, and so I can tear that up and use that in my work. And as you can see, it comes in different colors with different prints on it. Here's one that I've already started using in other journals. And I just like to use a matte medium. You can use a Mod Podge, which is a decoupage medium. Again, look for the matte. The matte allows you to close the book without the pages sticking together. Now the matte medium here is kind of like a toothpaste or a glue consistency, which is very nice to work with. To do that, I always make sure I have a bucket of water so that I can drop my brush in it, because it is a glue and it will just destroy the brush. So I like to just take a little piece of the pattern, and I take my time separating it. So I do all the work of getting it down to a single piece, and then I'll tear it up, and then I'll just add it somewhere to my page. When I find a spot that I like, I'll brush a very thin layer of matte medium down, place the tissue paper down, and then I brush a little matte medium over it. Again, you want to use the least amount possible. Now my piece went off the page. That's totally fine. Once it dries, I'll cut it down to size. Another thing you can do is after you have your matte medium down, you can take just an old cut up gift card or plastic credit card and just brush across your piece. And that just removes additional glue. Now I can see here that I didn't get glue underneath this part of the tissue paper. So I'm going to go back and add glue underneath that just so that it sticks. And if it tears or rips, well, that's okay. That's additional interest at this point in my work. Again, I'll just double check up here. Yep, it looks pretty good. I lay down just the slightest bit of glue and then gently spread it. And again, I'll take my wax paper, set it down so that I can continue to work on additional pages. I might skip some pages. I might only use collage on a few pages in my book. I just want something that I can add some interest to the pages. So I'll do that, and then we'll start our next process for adding interest to the blank pages before we start. So I've added a few pages with just a little bit of collage. Again, it's not the theme of the book. It's just a little bit of texture and just something to add to each page so it's not blank. Now, the majority of pages have some form of marks on them, and I'm not done yet. The last thing I like to do, and I do this kind of sparingly, is I'll take some ink. This is dye ink. It is either distress, ink, or oxide, and they interact with water. So if I'm going to paint over it with watercolor or marker, it will react, but that's okay. Again, I use it sparingly. The oxide has more of an opaque finish. The ink is more translucent. Happens to be the same color. You can see kind of the difference here. And all I like to do is just take a very simple rubber stamp. In this case, I'm just going to use these little round dots. These are one of my most used stamp. I put that onto a block here, and then I ink it up. And I can ink it up entirely or partially. And then I'll take a page. This one has a lot going on, but I'll still add a little bit. And I just stamp like this. Now let me show you what I mean by it interacts with water. It's just a different look. And if it's not the look you want, get a permanent ink. But I'll just take some water either in a brush or in this spritz bottle, and I spray, and you can see it starts to bleed. Now you can brush it around or just dry it like that. And I'll do that. I'll mute this so you don't hear this shrill noise. But if you don't mind that bleeding, then you can use a dye ink. I don't mind that, so I use it. Again, get a permanent ink if you want to stamp on your pages, but you don't want that interaction with any type of water substance. So I'll just go through my pages and add a few stamps here and there. So there, I've added really a lot of interest to the pages. Now off camera, when everything dries, I'll trim the pages and I'll remove the wax paper, which I will save because I'll use it in the future in the hopes that I can work on multiple pages. I get enough time to do that. But I'm just loving how it comes out. It's already taken away a lot of the concern, like, oh, where do I start? And it makes a very rich background. I might cover up all of this work that I've already done, but that's okay because I might not as well. And that's what takes away all that pressure. So in future videos, I'll show you different techniques for each of the pages. I can't wait to do this. Oh, love art journaling. It's such a creative outlet. So those are the 3 things that I do to prep my art journals. Some journals I'll do all of those techniques. Others I'll omit 1 or 2, or I might modify it somewhat. It's a fun way to take away the scariness of that blank page. Sometimes with a blank page, I don't want to add things to it for fear that I'll ruin it. Well, I've already added elements and marks, and this way it's already started. Now I can just have fun with it. I'll show future videos in this theme, this art journaling theme, with different techniques and different things that I do to my journals. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And for additional content, please consider becoming a paid member of my channel. I give behind the scenes footage, a glimpse into my personal life, and a sneak peek at what's coming up. Thanks for joining me today.